All right, welcome to the Diamond Hands podcast for the week of September 27th, a division of the Dales Media Group. I'm your host, Shad Dales. All views on the Diamond Hands podcast and the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or our guests as investment advice. The views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Joining me, as usual, is Anthony Verrill, millennial entrepreneur. Anthony, how are things?
Things are good. Things are good.
Goldman Sachs. Stacks? Or sucks?
Stacks. Shout out Murders and Acquisitions for the t-shirt.
Good stuff. Also joining me, lead financial writer from the Dales Report, BenjaminA.Smith. Ben, how are things?
Things are well, Shad. Yourself?
Excellent. All right, gents, let's get into it. We start off with crypto. The megaphone of crypto is getting louder. Jay Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, says he is not in favor of banning crypto. Anthony, start with you. Do you think this is a changing of the tides where the U.S. is trying to capitalize in this space, knowing obviously the uncertainty what's going on in China?
I mean, I'll take it. Jay Powell carries a lot of weight. Jay Powell's got is under a microscope constantly. And I mean, Jay Powell is at the center of our monetary policy. If he's got lax views on crypto, that's going to reverberate. It's going to carry into other circles of conversation. And I mean, at the end of the day, even if the United States wants to deploy a USDC, a US digital coin, I don't think it's going to be any sort of, threat to crypto. I mean, all of crypto has different use cases up and down, from Ethereum to DeFi to Bitcoin. They're not going to infringe on the purchasing power or the upwards mobility of an actual centralized currency for the US or China abroad.
What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I think so. I think I agree with echo Anthony's statements. I don't think there's going to be a tug of war with regulations from various bodies throughout the world. But I think it's going to find a way. So I wouldn't put too much credence into that.
Well, one of the things I wanted to bring up is Elon Musk. He made news this week as well, saying crypto should be left alone and it's impossible to destroy. It's a bold statement. Do you agree with that?
I mean, I like Elon. I know a lot of people think he's a charlatan, which, I mean, he kind of is. But he's also one of the greatest minds of our generation. I mean, he's right. Technology, no matter what, you're going to have bad actors. You're also going to have good actors, and you're going to have innovators that are going to rise to the top. The general public, with the access to crypto now, there's a very strong argument to where they do need to be protected to some degree from the bad actors. But I mean, I think if you really want crypto to flourish and you really want it to reach its peak of where it's going, leave it alone. Don't regulate it. Don't hinder it with regulation. But we do need to find a way to govern it and really harness it for what it is.
When you say govern it, like, what would you like to see done? Do you have an idea?
Just oversight. I mean, if you look at ICOs, that was a gong show. You had a lot of people make a lot of money. A lot of people lose a lot of money. A lot of people steal a lot of money. You've got the same thing going on right now in NFTs. Due to the internet, due to its peer-to-peer, P2P nature, and just due to the inherent ecosystem, I mean, it's ripe with bad actors. Like I said, it's also ripe with good actors. There just needs to be some sort of fear that's instilled to deter the bad actors.
You mentioned NFTs. We've seen it cool down a little bit in the last week or two. Have we reached its peak right now?
I mean, there's a lot of the top projects have peaked. Actually, CryptoPunks, the floor is up week over week, which is good. What I found most intriguing is I mentioned MetaHero last week on the podcast. And as of yesterday, they released their planetary DAO tokens, which is an offshoot of the ecosystem. It's actual token representing each of the planets that the heroes are located on. And this was actually interpreted by a lot of the crypto community as a cash grab. This total drop is going to generate around $180 million in revenue. Out of that $180 million pot, 55% of it is going to be allocated to the Up DAO, which consists of all of those planetary DAO tokens. So it's going to go into the development of their platform and ultimately be distributed from the value the platform throws off to the token holders. But conversely, the creators pocket up to 45% of the proceeds from the launch. So do the math. They've got quite a windfall coming their way. Granted, they've made immense value for the community thus far, and it's arguably justified. But at the end of the day, this is being seen as like a cash grab, even though the drop was successful yesterday.
Hey, Anthony, speaking of NFTs, last week I put in my newsletter, I came across a chart that said the peak of the NFT market, is down like 90% from like late August or whatever. So would you interpret that as just like a volatile sector just sort of, coming down and it's going to go back up, or how do you interpret that data?
I mean, I think that's also a loaded question. I mean, what are we talking about? Are we talking about peak prices per NFT? Are we talking about peak volume? Are we talking about peak wallet openings?
Yeah, it was peak prices.
What KPIs? Like peak price?
Peak prices paid for these NFTs was down like 90% to over.
No, I don't think we're at peak whatsoever. I mean, there's projects right now. I'm not going to name names, but there's ones that I don't think are warranting a tenth of the value that they're valued at right now, and they continue to grow. The apes are still stable and growing with the floor of 40. CryptoPunks, the floor I just mentioned, I think it's about 360,000 USD that they're at right now. There's projects across the board coming out, which I'm not touching. I'm really allocating my dollars and collecting NFTs in platforms that have utility and ones that have legacy that have been around for a while. I'm not getting into any of these new 10,000 mint PFP spray and pray NFT projects.
Lot to take in, lot to understand. And for those that are still learning, we actually have our guest of the week, Ben Samaru from WonderFi, to teach us more about the crypto, DeFi, and NFT space. All right, Ben Samaru joins us for our guest of the week here on the Diamond Hands podcast. He's the CEO of WonderFi. Ben, appreciate you checking in on the podcast this week.
My pleasure. Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, Anthony, Ben, I wanted to have you both on. Important conversation. It's been a week ago since the big announcement in the China crypto crackdown, making all crypto activity illegal. So want to get both your takes, and most importantly, Ben, you obviously being well-versed within the crypto, NFT, and most importantly, DeFi space. But what was your thoughts on the whole announcement and what you think this might mean in Q4?
Yeah, so I can jump in first. So I think it's obviously. So I don't think it's a surprise coming out of China, basically. I think we've definitely seen a trend over there with, the authoritarian regime really pushing away from anything that puts power back in the hands of people. And so I think it's sort of par for the course. There's been a lot of, if you Google kind of, China regulatory, crypto, fintech, banking, et cetera, like you'll see these types of announcements and declarations have been being made for many, many years. And I think like earlier, I think in the last, maybe 12 or 18 months they've been cracking down on peer-to-peer lending, like outside of crypto. And that's, there's some really legitimate, like high value companies there that have been operating for a long time. And, some of my kind of colleagues are involved with where all of a sudden they say no peer-to-peer lending. And then it's punishable. It's a criminal act now. And so I think you see sort of decisions like that, that come out. And so I don't think it's any surprise that this decision comes out with respect to crypto, but I don't think that, I don't think that regulators and other countries share that perspective. So I think that's sort of what's important. China is sort of on its own independent path, in my view.
Anthony, you said it last week. Anytime you see this announcement, Bitcoin has seen all-time highs. You still think something like that could happen?
Yeah, I mean, historically, every time China's came out, we've seen kick to the upside, and then we've seen a new all-time high to follow. I mean, I'm not really scared of it. They didn't ban the possession of it, and they're just getting defensive to roll out their digital yuan, which, I mean, if you really look at it, as far as monetary policy goes, I mean, there's room in the ecosystem for the digital yuan, for the digital dollar. I mean, the good thing about crypto, especially when you look up and down from DeFi to Ethereum to Bitcoin, which as far as I'm concerned now is a store of value. I mean, it's not a currency. There's room for all of these to exist, and they're not going to infringe on each other. China, I think, is being defensive. As Ben elaborated, China is very against peer-to-peer. They want everybody dependent on the state. They don't want autonomy, especially when it comes to monetary policy in the financial markets.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I welcome it. If it didn't happen the first time that they banned crypto, it's not going to happen the sixth time that they ban crypto. So I think just let it be, and the market will do its thing. I bought on the dip and we're way past where it dipped to last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well, go ahead, Ben.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Anthony, and I feel like this goes into the broader trend of sort of regulators across the world, moving forward with their thinking around crypto and DeFi, et cetera. And I think for those of us that have been in the space for a long time, you sort of see that there's always these announcements that come out, and it's part of the process. Like it's never something that's a showstopper. It definitely, they're important, they're important decisions and information that's coming out and guidance that the regulators are providing. But it's part of the process. So I think when you say, hey, I bought the dip when that happened, it's like that's obviously somebody that's been in the space for a long time that knows this is not cause for concern. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big quote guy, but I mean, Mark Andreessen is famous for saying that well-behaved bubbles don't make history, and I'm all for it. I mean, this is going to be chaos. It's going to be volatile. I mean, it's inherent in the system, and it's you either ride the wave or get on the sidelines. One of the two.
Well, in addition to crypto, Anthony, you'd mentioned DeFi, and Ben, obviously, you're very well versed with your company WonderFi being in the DeFi space, one that you're building right now. I want to ask, everywhere you look, you're learning more and more about this topic, this industry. Can this eventually become legitimate alternatives to traditional banks, like for customers wishing to generate yield on deposit savings? Like, is that where we are going with this, Ben?
I think it is a legitimate alternative. I don't think we're going to be in a place where DeFi stands alone in 3 or 5 or more years. There's definitely going to be, there needs to be interaction between our, traditional systems and then what's evolving here. And I think you're going to continue to see different offerings that are like at different points along the spectrum of decentralization and centralization. And I think there's to Anthony's point around room for different digital currencies, there's room for all of these different types of products to exist. And I think nobody knows what the level of adoption will be like in 5 years, and the market will just run its course, and really what consumers want and demand is going to continue to change over time. Right now, we're definitely seeing a trend towards people wanting to be empowered to own and control their own assets and not trust the bank. And there's a big social movement behind that outside of crypto. That could continue, I think that's going to continue. But, I think there's, the world is complex and these things are going to continue to evolve. So I think we'll see kind of a mix of both going forward.
Well, when you say evolve, what do you think, Anthony? How much time do you think this will take for this entire space to mature? Or are we seeing it mature already?
I think we're super early still. I think that the regulatory conversation right now is going to set a lot of precedent on future growth. I mean, if the SEC, for instance, decides to clamp down on DeFi, I mean, that's going to stunt growth, and I think it's going to stunt user adoption. I don't see that happening. They don't even understand fundamentally what it is right now. Yeah. But I mean, the good part about DeFi is I wouldn't think of it in a traditional banking sense. I'd think of it more as you're gaining optionality to how you want to earn yield on your money. For instance, like I've been on the show and chose Sushi Swap multiple times, traded in and out of it as my picks of the week. If I own Sushi Swap, I can either own the hot coins in my wallet, I can stake them, I can yield farm. My risk profile obviously goes up, which there's going to be an educational curve, which segue, not to plug, but WonderFi solves that problem for consumers being able to I guess moderate their risk profile up and down the DeFi space. But I mean, I see it as financial freedom and optionality to do as what I want with my money, and I actually own my money. It's not just a number sitting in a Wells Fargo account that at any given time can just poof.
See, that's the you got to take that clip, Shad, and make sure that that's put out there, because that's the important part that people miss, is that this is not about just wanting to make big returns on your on your money, on your crypto, like all that stuff, which I think there's definitely a perception of the crypto space that's what it's about. It's about these big returns, because that's what a lot of the media is about. That's what how a lot of people communicate within the space. But what Anthony said is bang on. It's about being able to look at your money differently and use it differently. And I know for sure from talking to a lot of younger people who are going to be, you know, the future of what our financial system is. That's what they care about. They're not like, hey, I want to make 10x, I want to make 20x, or I want to earn interest even. It's like, yeah, I just want to like try this and, you know, not get scammed. I want to participate and like, you know, see how this new technology works. And it's just as simple as that.
Yep.
Guys, appreciate your time. Appreciate you checking in this week, Ben.
Thanks a lot, Ben.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, guys.
All right, let's shift our attention now to the cannabis space. House Committee this week advanced a bill. Chuck Schumer and Cory Booker are standing in the way of the Safe Banking Act not passing in the Senate unless there is a more comprehensive reform around legalization, Ben. So is that realistic to think that that can get done?
Personally, I don't think so. A lot of the analyst notes out there, they don't think so as well, from what I've read. So I don't think it is, and I think a lot of people, a lot of investors are wondering why Chuck Schumer is insistent on, and Cory Booker are insistent on, rolling out this reform package all at once instead of taking incremental steps. Passing something akin to the Safe Banking Act and then going from there. And it's hard not to. It's hard to argue with that sort of sentiment. I have a sense that investors are really, just sort of tired from all this sort of back and forth, goalpost moving. Will legislation sort of move the ball forward? Will it not? And things just, timelines just keep kind of edging out in the future. So, it looks like they want to go for it all, and I'm not sure that they will at this point before the midterms, anyway.
Anthony, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Chuck Schumer and Cory Booker have been champions for the cannabis industry in DC for some time now. But if you really think that you're going to pass comprehensive reform all at once, like, you're fucking crazy, to be quite frank. I mean, pass safe, get it decriminalized, then we go into mass incarcerations being addressed, then we go into legalization being addressed. I mean, cannabis it's not only a hot button issue, but it's a vast issue. There's a lot of breadth and depth and nuance into what's going on. It's not going to all come at once. To think it's all going to come at once, it just leads me to believe that they want to own it. They want the spotlight and they want the recognition. It's not going to happen like that. We need to take baby steps. And the first step is allowing these companies to use banks and decriminalizing the plant. Once that happens, then we have something to build on.
And do you know, to echo that point, just to perspective here, like the United States was, they conducted the war on drugs, right? From the Nixon era. This is like 40 or 50 years of just hardcore cannabis is not being allowed in society, going to other countries, taking covert sort of teams and torching other cannabis fields. So we're talking we're coming from a point to go from there all the way to cannabis reform, where it's suddenly legal and it has all the benefits of full legalization, descheduling, all that. It seems very unrealistic. So I echo Anthony's statements, and I think a lot of people, it would be a lot easier to get that sort of reform if you passed incremental reforms such as Safe First and get it more normalized in the industry, and then it'll make it harder for them to take the next step. So I think that's what a lot of investors are thinking right now.
Yeah, I mimic that exact same sentiment.
Well, you guys bring it up as far as reform's concerned. The more we go down this road, we're seeing more and more of a political agenda become more and more clear. And do you agree with the reform and legislation? You see a lot of announcements coming on this week, including for example, Chris Webber announcing that $175 million compound that he's going to be building in Detroit. Do you think initiatives like that are very important for Washington first and foremost before the whole investment side?
I mean, I think that they're very important. Don't get me wrong. The social equity component in cannabis is needed. The social equity component in cannabis is welcomed, but you got to call a spade a spade. It's all being financed by rich white guys.
Yeah.
They're all figuring out how to game the system. I mean, they started with opportunity zones in real estate, and now we have social equity reform in the cannabis sector. It's good. It's got a good cause.
Do you think this is how they're making their money? Is this how they're making their money though? Yeah.
Yeah, it's done up and down the coast of California. I know guys that are in the retail space that all they do is look for social equity applicants and then fund them. I'm all for minority inclusion in the cannabis sector. It needs to be much more widespread. It needs to be much more inclusive than it is right now. But I mean, investors really need to do their diligence when they're looking at these, because it's a lot of Trojan horses for a lot of rich white guys to make even more money off the backs of these social equity programs.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, a few companies I want to talk specifically in the space, and this is where I kind of shake my head. We've talked about fundamentals and how important it is, especially after what happened 4 or 5 years ago in Canada. Here we are today. Trulieve, they announced the harvest closing this week. They also sold their Florida license through a harvest acquisition of $55 million of fresh cash. And Stiefel announces a price target of $132 based on a lot of the fundamentals that they are producing. But right now, Ben, it appears it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think we're at a stage where the fundamentals don't matter. I mean, if you just look at simple metrics like price of sales, EV to EBITDA, and these are genuine growth companies growing 15 to 25% sequentially, most of them. And I mean, it's just off the charts. It doesn't make any sense. And I think investors have to realize that there are periods in time in the market, at least in my opinion, that fundamentals don't really matter for whatever reason. Now, you could say that these stocks trade on a sort of a tier 2 or tier 3 exchange in the CSE. You can say whatever you want to say. Maybe there's not enough institutional investment, but whatever the cause, right now, obviously, fundamentals are being thrown out the window, or Trulieve would be trading a lot closer to where Stiefel's price target is, and a lot of these, most of the tier ones would be at least double to what they are, right? So that's the way I look at it, and perhaps Anthony can elucidate why these multiples are so low.
Yeah, I mean, it's just lack of volume, it's lack of institutional investors, and it's just lack of interest and uncertainty in the sector. I mean, Trulieve just closed a $350 million debt facility with an 8% coupon, which, as far as everything is concerned in the cannabis sector, that's best in class. They've got, like you had mentioned, Ben, they've got $55 million from this Florida for the sale of the Florida license that they inherited through the harvest acquisition. They also just gained an entire West Coast presence that they're going to be able to deploy capital into and then execute across. I mean, I love to see sectors where the fundamentals are dislocated to the upside. And right now we happen to be in a complete dislocation of fundamentals to the downside in the cannabis sector. I mean, I'm still net a buyer. I added to some of my positions today. I'm a large shareholder in Trulieve. I'm not selling any of my stock anytime soon, regardless of the price action. And I'm acting in good faith, as I really do think that we're going to see greener pastures here shortly. Yeah. Hopefully.
All right. That wraps it up for cannabis. Let's now shift to psychedelics. Hello? Is anybody home? Not much going on in this space right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's to the point now where we don't even know what to talk about in psychedelics. It's like we've stalled completely, which, I mean, I don't know if it bodes well. It means all the companies have their heads down and they're really working on their business plans and working on their research, and there's nothing to really report. But I mean, that's what sucks about biotech. You get ebbs and flows. We're going to have weeks where it's just ripe with content, and right now it's just a lull, and it happens to be at the wrong time when the capital markets are in a flux. And it's not shown lightly in the psychedelic sector.
Yeah, it's kind of it kind of says it all when the biggest news this week is Elon Musk coming out with comments about how psychedelics could be more adoptive. Here's a guy who owns Tesla and is into things like SpaceX and all that, and he's commenting on the psychedelic sector, which he really hasn't been involved with, and that is sort of the leading news in the sector, right? So that kind of tells you it all in terms of where we are in terms of news flow, in terms of catalyzing news flow, in terms of investor interest overall, right? So really.
Yeah, well, our very
we're like stuck in the mud.
Our very own Amanda Siebert, who's also a contributor for Forbes, did a story on Friday, and it was all about that point, Ben. It was about Elon Musk and his quotes, within the psychedelic industry, and she asked the question, like, does it matter? Like, who really cares? Put your money where your mouth is and, step up. But you're right. Like, there's not a lot of attention and focus going on in the space right now. But what was your take out of it all with, his comments, I guess, so to speak, Anthony, with regards to once the older generation is no longer in power, you'll see a new generation of people that create new laws, and psychedelics will be here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, I like seeing that the subjects are coming to the forefront of pop culture and of culture in general. I mean, if you look at Netflix, they're ripe with content on psychedelics, everything from dramas to documentaries. I like when Elon starts to talk about things that I'm invested in. It usually net bodes well for them. But getting back to the ageist problem, I mean, it's kind of frustrating for me to really harp on saying that innovation is going to come when this older crowd kind of kicks the bucket, per se, because I mean, we're looking at that same narrative is being said in crypto, cannabis, psychedelics, technology. It's like we have a governing body right now that's completely dislocated to the fundamentals of how any of these arenas actually work.
Yeah.
And I mean, unless it's done with force, which we're not going to be able to do, I'm going to be 50 by the time there's any kind of change that's based on ageism.
You don't believe that, do
So, I
you?
mean,
You honestly believe that?
no, I mean, 50 might be a stretch. I mean, I'm talking a little,
Well,
little crazy, but I mean, if you're going to count on these people dying in order for them to get out of their post and allow for a more forward-thinking, younger audience to come in, I mean, no, I mean, I forget who it was, but one of the senators in the U.S. is running for another term. He's fucking 85.
85.
He doesn't even have a cell phone. He has no
85.
idea how the world works right now. Meanwhile, he's influencing legislation.
Well, at least
And I
he's
mean,
younger than Arlen
it's
Specter, who was like, what, 91 before he died,
yeah,
who did re-election or something?
yeah. I mean, it's constantly there's a recurring theme whenever the Senate committee on whichever of their respective disciplines calls leaders of industry in, and it's that they time and time again show a complete lack of understanding to whatever they're speaking about,
100%.
whether it's the financial sector, the technology sector, crypto. I'm sure cannabis will be up on the hill sooner or later. They don't understand what they're talking about, and it's just repetitive, and it's stunting growth, it's stunting innovation, and starting to really, I guess, stifle a lot of people from clarity into these nascent sectors.
Amen to that. We've seen a lot of change over the last 10 years, and many believe the next 10 will make the last 10 look like we were standing still. And
I hope so.
yeah, I can't help but think that, COVID was kind of like a knocking on the door. We're now in an era where it's the era of resignations. People that are forced
Yeah.
to go back to work 5 days a week are saying, fuck that. And a lot of the management that's in play is a baby boomer generation that wants people at their offices. And that's a clear example as to how out of touch with the way the working world is being accomplished, knowing in the midst of what we're currently in right now, a global pandemic. So good points, guys. Let's wrap things up. Let's go to the lightning round and let's get your picks. I know Ben was really scratching his head earlier about who to pick, but Anthony, if you got some picks, let's hear obviously what they are.
I'm going with Trulieve. I mean, they're fresh off this debt facility. They're getting a capital infusion. It's officially closed with Harvest. You couldn't have a better setup fundamentally. Even though, I mean, I both think we're all in the same boat that we are disconnected from the fundamentals now. But this thing's like it's 40% off of the high from I think 6 weeks ago.
Wow.
I'm getting in Trulieve now, and I'm continuing to build my position.
Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's good. Overall, I think MSOs is actually, if you're a long-term focused investor, is in a really good place because we all know where it's going long-term. Absolutely 100%. It's just a matter of timing. And if you're a long-term investor, that's a good place to be in because you don't have to rush it, right? You don't have to worry about too much of the downside. Like you're able to buy value and growth at a very discounted price. So it's just a time thing at this point. I'm a little skeptical on MSOs shorter term, maybe up until Christmas because you have like things like tax loss selling and stuff. But I think heading into 2022, it looks pretty good.
Anthony, second pick.
This is going to surprise people, and this is an arena that we have not covered on the podcast. But I'm going with the uranium ETF. I've been doing some research into it. The charts for the actual commodity are setting up. There's supply being taken offline, and there's just a growing demand for nuclear. I was actually talking to one of my investors in my fund, who's a mineral guy, made a lot of money in oil and gas and energy, and I started to do some diligence around it, and I found it quite interesting. Started to build a position this week, so I would definitely be looking at uranium.
Cool. And Ben, got a last pick?
Yeah, I'm going with Compass Pathways. I've rung the bell on that 2 or 3 times during the podcast in recent weeks. But the way I see it, you're looking at the biggest psilocybin study in the sector, the biggest, in pretty much ever. You're looking at something that is fully powered that should reveal statistical significance. And you're talking about a news-driven sector, which psychedelics is. So there's nothing more news-driven than having results by the leader in the space. So if those are good, like I expect them to be, I think Compass will be a lot higher, in the future than it is now. If you're looking, 3 months from now.
I'm taking one out of your pocket, Anthony. Cybin is my 60-day play. I think you're going to see some big growth in the next 60 days for Cybin.
I hope so. I've got some room to recapture my positions. So let's do it. I know it's the highest held. Which ETF picked it up, Ben? It's their biggest holding.
That's the Horizon ETF, advisor shares, and also interestingly, Horizon ETF. It was like had a 7% allocation more than the second company, which was Field Trip. So both of those ETFs really like Cybin.
I like Compass's news coming, and like to your point, but I think my 60-day play in that space is definitely Cybin. All right, gents, good week. By the way, before I let you go, how did we do last week in the football picks? You picked the Bills or the Redskins?
Ben wound up well.
Yeah, I picked the Bills. I'm a matchup guy when it comes to doing my capping in sports, and Washington doesn't really have a lot of big breakout players, and the Bills have 1 or 2 cornerbacks which are like Pro Bowlers. So that worked out well. They kind of blew them out. This week, I'm going for the Bills for my own survivor pool because I withheld that pick last week to take them this week. So I'm going Bills. If you want to play it safe.
Okay.
Let's pick 3 games for Sunday then. Who we got? First up, Cowboys-Panthers. That's an interesting one. I'm going Panthers.
Cowboys.
You going Cowboys, huh?
Oh, no way. Yeah, the Panthers don't have McCaffrey.
Oh, that's true. However, they haven't played in 10 days, and Dallas played Monday night. We'll always remember that. Team that wins on Monday night comes out slow, I think, on Sunday. Anybody see the kick that Justin Tucker made, the 66-yarder?
66-yarder, yeah. That was
unbelievable.
That was a sight to see. That carried he carried me in fantasy last week.
Oh my! And what's even more embarrassing was the ownership at halftime when they were paying tribute to Calvin Johnson. They actually had to cut it short because
they booed him.
Oh, they weren't booing him; they were booing the owners.
Yeah, but still, it's like give the guy respect.
And last game, here's an interesting one. Cardinals are at the Rams. Both 3-0 teams. Who you like there?
Rams.
Yeah. Matt Stafford really going to be an MVP?
Matt Stafford looks like Aaron Rodgers right now,
doesn't he?
And I mean, we've seen what Sean McVay does with a gunslinging quarterback. That defense is, I don't know what the hell happened to that defense, but the defense looks unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, if they can get a running game together, that team is going to go to the the Super Bowl again.
You got to love Aaron Donald. You're watching like a Hall of Fame defensive tackle in action, right? He's sort of like a hybrid defensive tackle and defensive end. He plays on the inside. The guy's so quick and he's so powerful, low center of gravity. I mean, he's one of my favorite players to watch in defense. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Reggie White, a smaller version of Reggie White 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, he was unbelievable. All right, guys, have a great week. Appreciate the feedback.
He's also got one of the best nicknames, the Minister of Defense. That's one of the best ones out there.
Hey, wasn't that Reggie White's nickname back in the day? Because he was an actual minister.
Reggie White was the minister of Defense.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a great nickname.
I don't know who's the best. Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor, Derek Thomas, the late great Derek Thomas. Who else? You kind of got to give it to LT. Yeah. Aaron Donald's right there with him too, though, right?
Oh, yeah. So is Ray Lewis.
He's a linebacker, but yeah. Yeah, I'd have to say Ray Lewis could be the best linebacker since I've been alive.
He's up there.
He's up there. All right, guys. Appreciate the week. Have fun watching.
Have a good one, guys.
We'll keep in touch and catch up with you next week.